Everything I loved in Leviathan Wakes is back and better in Book 2 of The Expanse, Caliban's War. So today I'm going to share my thoughts and a quick review of that book. So hello, my name is Zach. I mostly review science fiction and fantasy books, and today I'm talking about Book 2 of The Expanse, Caliban's War. So in this book, we continue on the adventures of Holden and the Rocinante and the proto-molecule. So the proto-molecule is back. The set the stage of this book is we open on this scene with the Martian Marines, and they encounter this proto-molecule soldier. So right from the get-go, at the end of the first book, we thought we had finished the proto-molecule. They sent it off to Venus, but of course, things went wrong. And as we see from the opening kind of action setup, the proto-molecule is back, and now it's somehow creating super soldiers. So that's where we are in Book 2. We're back in the Expanse universe, back in the gritty Martians, OPA, Earthers, and it was just simply a great ride. So start with what I liked about the book was all the new characters. So Miller and Holden were great in the first one, but it was a bit much with both of them kind of back and forth, sometimes in the same scene. In Book 2, in Caliban's War, they as the authors, James S.A. Corey, they expand the characters to 4 main characters. So the first of all to talk about, of course, is Avasarala, who everyone knows, everyone loves, and now finally reading Book 2, I see why everyone loves her. So to set some extra context, I had watched season 1 of the Expanse TV series, and out of order for TV compared to the books, Avasarala was in the first season. So that kind of left me confused when I was reading Leviathan Wakes is where's the whole UN Avasarala plotline in the first book? Because she plays a role in the series where she's already manipulating things, giving the UN perspective on the proto-molecule from season 1. So it was an interesting choice, I guess, from the series now that I read the books and how she's introduced here, and she wasn't actually in Book 1. So I was kind of waiting for her to show up, and she finally shows up. And maybe that's why it didn't really work for me in the series at first. Like, I didn't love her in the show. Maybe, again, I've only seen season 1, but in the book, I do end up loving her. I thought she was a great character. She's easily the standout, the favorite. Just her whole persona of this old, frail Indian woman who has the potty mouth and is putting all these generals and tough Marines in line with her sass and her wit. And then, of course, the complexity of her character. And that's one thing I really loved. And again, I saw bits of this in the TV series. She has that whole dichotomy with Arjun, her husband, who's like the grounding force in her life and the balance to her. And in the writing of this book too, you really see that longing and connection they have when Avasarala will get on a call and make contact with Arjun. Just the writing, you really felt that in her character, how she really needs Arjun as that balance to all the craziness that she deals with on the galactic scale, trying to keep the peace with the UN. So I loved the character. I love those behind the scenes moments, kind of behind the mask, when we see what the real Avasarala is like. That yes, she has this gritty persona, and she shows it at times in those moments with Arjun and with Bobby. So Bobby is the other great character. I absolutely loved her as well. She's the new character that were introduced straight from the prologue, and yeah, she is this new kind of thing we haven't seen in the series, because I guess Book 1, it was really stationed on Eros Station, so we don't really see that much. I would not say diversity, because the Rocinante crew is very diverse, but we didn't really see from the Martian Marine side. So to get that perspective of how Bobby is interpreting this, and kind of she questions her allegiance, that how she is a Martian, she identifies with the plight of the people on Mars, and when there's talks of the proto-molecule, and what it would happen if it invaded a Martian city, the disaster it would cause by going rampant on these tightly packed Martian cities. And then she has her allegiance to her employer at the time, which is Avasarala, later in the book, of course. So her character became so complex, and it was great to see that Martian side of humanity of the characters, again, that we hadn't really seen up to this point, because again, our main focus previously was Holden and then Miller, who were the OPA Earth kind of foil at the time. So we saw the Belters, we saw the Earthers, but we hadn't seen the UN side, which now we have Avasarala, and then now we have Bobby, the Martian side. So those are the three, and then you have Prax, who is the doctor that the whole book revolves around, where he was okay. I didn't like him as much, but he sort of grew me by the end because, again, as an older reader, as a father myself, I did see the humanity and the realism of his story of trying to find his daughter at all costs throughout the galaxy, never giving up hope. So it was okay. Like his character and Holden, to talk about Holden and the Rocinante, he wavered to me. So at the end, I loved him. At the beginning, he does his kind of typical Holden self-righteousness, that he's always right and he's the rebel that everyone gets behind. And so he has a complex character arc in this book, which was great. To see kind of his growth and some of the resolution of the stories with the Rocinante crew, which was a really standout moment for me. I kind of worried that the book was going to go, I guess, how fantasy novels go sometimes, where the band breaks up and we go on these side adventures with characters. We might follow the characters for a while before they reconvene as a group to take on the big bad guy at the end. And I was a little worried halfway through the book that was what was going to happen to the Rocinante. So about halfway through the book, the crew kind of fractures, and it was great that the authors dealt with this. I really liked this part of the story, and that's why I'm talking about in my like section, is because we're given kind of that insight that the crew has this kind of unresolved issues that they hadn't dealt with up to this point, mainly of what are they? Are they a team? Are they working for Holden? Because up to this point, they were working for the OPA and they were getting their contracts through that. But as they kind of break from the OPA and go on their own, the whole question of, okay, who are we working for? Where are we getting funding from? Holden was just the default captain because that made sense, but no one really nominated him to be a captain. So it was a really interesting choice to finally deal with that. And I guess early, quote unquote, in the series, because there's so many more books to go. So the crew does kind of hash it out. And I really like this evolution of the crew where we see from all the sides. Amos weighs in, Holden, of course, and we see just how they're interact with each other, how they resolve the interpersonal conflicts, and they decide that they're going to be sort of space pirates, space vigilantes, the highest bidder, Ronin, I guess you could say, to whoever pays the bill. And we kind of go through this GoFundMe fundraiser campaign with Prax, and they get the money to rescue the daughter, and they go on the rescue mission, which was what the book kind of turned out to be. And now I guess that'll be my segue into the semi-dislikes, which was the similarities to the first book. So the first book was more of a mystery uncovering. It's because we had Miller. It was sort of a detective story uncovering what was going on with the protomolecule. And in this book, it does hit a lot of the same beats, I felt, because the protomolecule is, again, sort of the shadow big bad guy antagonist off in the distance. This time, we know more about the protomolecule and we see it turn to soldiers. So the threat changes a bit. It's not just melting the vomit zombies of Aero Station, but it's still the protomolecule. It's still kind of that same lingering threat. And then similar to the first book, like they were going after May. No, May's the one they're saving this book. The daughter of the conglomerate that engineered the protomolecule. Totally slow the name, but May is the daughter of this one. So just like they were rescuing the tycoon's daughter that I'm totally forgetting, even though I'm doing this review right now, they're also on a rescue mission for someone's daughter. So that felt similar beats to me of the structure of the story, that yes, it was another sort of rescue mission from the protomolecule threat. And this time twisted a little bit because we assume that May's going to still be alive at the end, that Prax is going to eventually get her. Hopefully that's his whole quest, is to save her. He's got this unwavering conviction that she's still alive. So the structure of the story was what to me was a semi not as interesting, that it was very similar with the looming threat of the protomolecule, but this kind of makes it great to be a second book because it just more continuation of the story of book one. We get a lot of resolution to those plot threads by the end. It's still that lingering extended book one because it's still the proto-molecule, even though it's slightly evolving, and we get some of the resolution of, again, where the Rocinante stands, where the Earth and Mars stand in the conflict, because at the end they kind of unite against this new immediate threat of these proto-molecule soldiers that start launching towards the planets. And that leads me to the summary and the huge takeaways, which was the ending. So again, James S.A. Corey nailed the ending. I love the ending of book one once the proto-molecule starts moving the station and does the crazy proto-molecule stuff. And very similar, we get like this final war battle where the proto-molecule launches like kind of soldiers into the air, and we kind of like, what the heck is happening with the proto-molecule now? How is it evolving? And then the final about, last two chapters when even talking about, I'm so hyped up, is when the proto-molecule leaves Venus and like ejects itself off Venus towards Earth. And it just ends on such a cliffhanger as the proto-molecule, this planet-sized goo from another galaxy, has invaded our solar system, and it launches itself towards Earth. And Holden is there with Naomi, and they're just sort of commiserating that, what do we do? This is the end. They finally kind of resolve their interpersonal conflict, and they're talking about kids. How do we raise kids in space versus not on Earth, like Holden's family would want? And then now you have this, galactic interstellar threat of the proto-molecule that they don't know how they're going to stop it. And then even after that, we get one more giant cliffhanger, because this is the super spoiler, but what Miller shows up again, who died at the end of the first book. So total cliffhanger. I am so hyped to read book three. Book two was, again, very gripping. The pacing was great. I love the story. I was totally engaged. I totally binge read it in about a week. It was just unputdownable, just because of the pacing. You start off with that, immediate conflict with the proto-molecule soldiers, with Bobby. She gets thrust into a little bit of politics as we kind of see the UN side with Avasarala, but Avasarala's whole arc and her story just kept me on the edge of my seat with just what's going to happen there. And especially, I think I'm talking about when she meets up with Holden, and once everyone gets together, which is again about that probably halfway point, when Avasarala is on, with the Rocinante, with Holden, and there's all together and all four of the plot lines are interacting, is just so much fun. It is such a great book. I cannot recommend the Expanse series enough after book two. I see why it's so great. I mean, I thought Leviathan Wakes was good, but yeah, man, Caliban's War was really good. Easy 5 out of 5 for me. I highly recommend it if you like science fiction and space operas. This is definitely one of the greats. I immediately placed my hold for book three, and I cannot wait for the library to get me book three, because I am going to binge it as soon as it becomes available. So thanks for listening and watching this video, which is my thoughts and review of The Expanse book two, Caliban's War. Have a great one.